Okay, so unsurprisingly, it looks like Ben Shapiro has made a very dumb comment. Now, as I said, very unsurprisingly, he said a lot of stupid things in the past, okay? One of those being that, climate change isn't that bad because people whose homes go underwater, they can just sell them and move. Obviously, the problem with that being no one's going to buy homes that are underwater. No one is going to buy them, obviously. So he said a lot of different dumb things, a plethora of those kinds of things that exist. Now we've got another one here. Now this is about slavery. Okay, he's going to talk about slavery, and he's someone who's against reparations. Of course, he's a Republican. He's a conservative. He's got to toe that line. You knew that was going to be his position. But since this video is about slavery, we're going to get demonetized. So if you're able to support, you will get over on Patreon, patreon.com/theprogressivevoice. There's a link below in the description box. You will get access to a bunch of patron-only content. A video about Destiny, some Kyle Klinsky content, etc., etc., as well as other benefits over there. So, also, this of course means that we can do more videos like this without having to worry about demonetization. So, consider becoming a supporter on Patreon, patreon.com/theprogressivevoice. Link to that is in the description box. So, anyways, to this clip, let us go ahead and hear out Mr. Shapiro.
The attempt to paint America's history as irreversibly dark and immutably terrible continues apace at our nation's great editorial newspapers. Jonathan Capehart, writing for the Washington Post, has an entire piece called Dismantling the Myth of America and the White Men Who Founded It. You see, they were all evil and terrible and no good and very bad, and that means that America's founding was very bad. He says, most Americans are unaware of our nation's problematic origin and messy history, of how the dualism of high-minded principle and indescribable cruelty has defined us, as Senator Tim Kaine said at the same ceremony. Thanks to the 1619 Project at the New York Times, that is going to change. 1619, as folks are calling it, is a massive retelling of the American story with African Americans appropriately at its center. It is the kind of retelling that continues putting the calls for reparations in their proper context and makes the absence of a national apology all the more galling. So, in other words, it backs Jonathan Capehart's agenda. There was a national apology for slavery. It was called the Civil War, where 700,000 Americans died.
Big yikes there. First of all, before I actually talk about the claim, I want to mention that do you ever think that his mouth just gets tired from talking so fast? His voice is incredibly annoying and he speaks at an extremely high speed. And I'm just curious if it gets tired because wow, that is really fast and really annoying. But so everyone was dunking on this for an obvious reason. The Civil War was not a national apology for slavery. Not only was it, I think it was over 200,000 Confederates who died in it, but obviously the Confederates were fighting to maintain the right to own slaves. If you look at pretty much all the secession letters of the states who were seceding from the nation, they were all like, we are doing it to preserve our state right of slavery. So there's always like this weird debate that goes on. Oh, no, it was about states' rights and liberty. By the way, states' rights, it's actually one of those dog whistles that end up happening. If you check out the Lee Atwater video, he talks about how they started using things like states' rights and, force busing and different things like that. Go check out that video. He was a part of, I believe, both the Nixon and Reagan administration. So it's used as this, bullshit dog whistle. But, obviously it was over slavery. And, it was a state right to own slaves, if that's what you want me to say. Okay, it was over a state right to own slaves. Also, in addition to that, there is an Abe Lincoln quote where he actually said in a letter, I don't remember to who, but he had sent this letter in which he said that he would, if he could save the Union by freeing no slaves, he would do that. So, to me, it just seemed like his main thing was how to preserve the Union. So even that, there didn't seem to be all that much of care going on right there. But people also seem to act as if after the Civil War and slavery was over, everything was, hunky-dory, everything was real great. Of course it wasn't. And, shit like that, there's still horrible shit that happens today. But basically after that, I think the North had occupied the South for a couple years, something like that. And then once they had dipped, it turned really bad really fast. If you don't know about, the black codes that they had in the southern states, Mississippi black codes, I think, is the most infamous one. Where, they had a bunch of racist-ass laws where it's like a white person can't marry a freedman, a freedman couldn't have a gun, if you were deemed a vagrant, they could put you to work, so you're basically just a slave again. All this different type of shit, okay? that was really horrible, that basically in effect just made slavery legal again. And they would, they would scare elected officials from running for office by killing them or threatening to kill them or threatening their families and going to polling stations and, threatening to kill people and shit like that. All of that different kind of stuff was going down. It's horrible how black people were treated after the Civil War. And on the topic of reparations, basically after Abe Lincoln had gotten assassinated, Andrew Johnson becomes president. Andrew Johnson really didn't want to do jack shit about Reconstruction. This is the Reconstruction period. He didn't want to do shit, so he actually inadvertently ended up propelling the Congress to passing the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. 13th abolished slavery, 14 has the Due Process Clause as well as naturalized citizens, and then 15th gave black people the right to vote. Moreover, they could have at least tried, and there were some people, they could have at least tried to do the reparations thing at the time. Basically, it was a Republican-controlled Congress, and what was deemed the radical Republican position at the time was, let's divvy up. I don't know if it was all or parts of Confederate land to give to freedmen, because it was like, yo, you can't just have an enslaved, race of people and then just have them free. Now everything's all good and you're on equal footing. It's like, no, like you need something to get started with. Like you need a footing to be on. You can't just, or else, and we still exist with this today where it's like, certain people are starting at like having a 100-yard dash and certain people are starting at the 80. You know what I'm saying? While everyone else is, at 0 or 10 or 20 or whatever. But they didn't do that. That didn't end up happening. The U.S. did not end up doing that. And so basically, freedmen did not get a piece of Confederate land. But what I have to say is, once the North left the South, I mean, really, they didn't really do anything to kind of stop all the horrible shit that was going on in the South. And I have a hard time believing that if the land of the Confederates were divvied up for the freedmen, I really have a hard time believing that would be something that would stay in place, considering that I would imagine that they would fight back and take and kill the freedmen who owned the land. So not only was there no apology from, the South, not only that, but they went on to be assholes forever. So he's really wrong in two ways. He's extremely wrong. And obviously they went to put up monuments and all this other kind of shit, they put up of Confederate generals, etc., etc. Not only did they fight to keep slavery, which is not a national apology, they went on to treat black people like shit for a really long time. If you don't know about the black codes, which I'm not sure how many of you guys don't know about black codes, just look them up. Just read the text. They're literally, publicly available. Go read the Mississippi black codes, for example. You'd be like, wow, this is really fucking shitty, dude. This is really shitty. And obviously that, went on and, eventually the civil rights movement in the 60s and stuff, which is way later, obviously. But it just goes to show you how horrible redlining was going on, poll taxes. The United States has been really shitty to black people. Let's put it that way. And the idea that the Civil War, really any of that shit, is a national apology, you'd have to literally be a lunatic or the dumbest person on the planet.